So I'm a little bit nervous about this presentation because I love the content, okay? So Miss Emily was helping me kind of trim it down and talk me through it a little bit. So I picked it for a summer day when we would have lighter attendance, so I could kind of work through some stuff, so apologize in advance for holding you captive. But good morning, my name is Chad Towarnicki, and I would like to welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Pottstown. Welcome to all those who are joining us here in the sanctuary. Welcome to those who are with us on Zoom and to those who are visiting our service in the future on YouTube. This morning our music will be played by Cecilia, so thank you, Cecilia. And thank you to Emily and Rick for setting up the tech for today. For close to 60 years, the UUFP has been a liberal religious voice in this Pottstown area. As Unitarian Universalists, we believe that every person possesses inherent worth and dignity. We welcome all who enter our community, regardless of the faith tradition, their race, their identity, or whomever they love. Before we get started, I just want to point out that the artwork on my slides is from a really famous edition of Moby-Dick by Rockwell Kent in the 1930s. So I love the artwork. Is like really I love it. It's really cool. It's really cool. It's a vibe, as the kids say. Herman Melville once wrote that, quote, "All men live lives enveloped in whale lines." That beneath the ordinary routines of our lives, we are all connected by unseen risks, by unexpected turns in life, and the shared reality of being human. We may not all sail the same waters, but none of us navigates these waters alone. Here we gather to help one another keep our bearings. The world's a big place with a lot of questions to explore, and here we keep an open mind and carry one another as we search. We hope that your spirit, your heart, your mind are refreshed this morning as we explore the UU messages in a text that I truly treat like scripture, Herman Melville's Moby-Dick. We come together this Sunday morning and every Sunday morning not because we share a creed, but because we share a promise to support one another in our spiritual journeys. Our services are different each week at UFP, but the loving kindness we offer one another in this community remains the same. So whoever you are, wherever you are from, and whomever you love, welcome aboard. We're going to begin with announcements. If you have any announcements to share, please come forward to the microphone so that everybody on Zoom and YouTube can hear you. I want to start with an announcement. Judy and I met on Friday with a state trooper. I believe his name was Officer Warren. And walked the grounds and did an assessment of our building. So he's going to give us a printout of where our weak spots are and things we should really consider. He was really upfront that it could be tens of thousands of dollars because you can get as carried away as you want to get. But one of the key things about having this printout from the state trooper is that we can use it to apply for safety grants, so that some of these safety improvements might not have to come out of UUFP, out of our little nest egg that we have. So it was nice to have somebody walk through and point out this and that and some things that we can change that don't cost that much money. But hopefully we can use that to springboard and afford some of the more expensive safety options. So that's coming down the pike. It's going to take 60 days to get the full printout. So that being said, does anybody else have an announcement you'd like to make? Okay, good. We're saving time already. More time for the whales. For our chalice lighting. Henry J., will you light the chalice, please? This is called Let Us Dare by UU Craig Rowland. In an age where words are easy to generate but harder to mean, we pause to light this flame not to perfect our messages, but to offer something true. We light this chalice for the quiet courage it takes to speak plainly of what moves us, for the voices inside us that say, "I've measured out my life with coffee spoons." But you have shown up all the same, hopeful, haunted, human, for every trembling invitation, every imperfect email that carries a piece of someone's heart, we give thanks. May this light remind us, connection begins not with a flawless gesture, but with an honest one, and even the smallest act of bravery can be the start of a shared path. Thank you, James. When two whaling ships meet at sea in the 1700s and 1800s, the gathering's called a gam. The vessels heave to, they cut their sails and lower smaller whaleboats so that they can board one another. They cross the open water to share news from distant ports, hand over mail, swap fresh provisions, trade charts that detail the currents, weather, where whale pods have been sighted, and they barter and share music and dance. As we enter our own gam this morning, let us find that same spirit of connection. Please silence your phones, settle your seats, and let the ring of this chime bring us together this morning. Okay, so part of what made me want to do this is every year on my birthday I reread Moby-Dick, and this year was the 13th year. And I know that it's been 13 years because the first time that I did it, my wife was pregnant with Henry, and Henry's 12. So I have like a relationship with this book. Another thing I read every year on my birthdays is from the journal Lewis and Clark, and I thought it was appropriate for America 250 to share this little excerpt. So Lewis and Clark, after the Louisiana Purchase, they were the ones who charted everything west of the Mississippi. They were looking for the Great Northwest Passage. They were recording flora and fauna. It was a huge accomplishment. It was also a death knell for the indigenous culture, so I don't want to gloss over that. Most of the journals are really methodical. We killed 6 elk, 4 antelope. We went this far on the Missouri River. Very clinical. On his birthday, Meriwether Lewis reflected at turning 31 at the base of Mount Hood. And I reread this passage every year on my birthday. I think it's really profound. This day I have completed my 31st year, and conceived that I have in all human probability now existed about half the period which I am to remain in this sublunary world. I reflect that I had as yet done little, very little indeed, to further the happiness of the human race, or to advance the information of succeeding generations. I view with regret so many hours I've spent in indolence, and now sorely feel the want of the information that those hours would have given me had they been judiciously expended. But since they are in the past and cannot be recalled, I dash from me the gloomy thought and resolve in the future to redouble my exertions, and at least endeavor to promote those 2 primary objects of human existence, by giving them the aid of that portion of talents which nature and fortune have bestowed upon me. In the future, I want to live for mankind as I have heretofore lived for myself. So please join us in singing hymn number 4, I Brought My Spirit to the Sea. Stand as you are willing or able in body or spirit.
Spirit to the sea.
story for all ages, and of course we have so few kids here, but if they want to come sit in the front, the story takes place on the screen. And this is a children's book that I've been shopping around, and I have a series of 6 of them, and they got denied because the endings are too sad. So, whatever, man. Whatever. So, I'm workshopping it, but this one is about albatrosses. And essentially, like, each stanza is on each slide, so we just gotta click through together. Okay. So, albatrosses are these big, huge birds that they would encounter on whaling ships all the time. Okay, so if you look at the pictures, that's what an albatross looks like head on the camera. So, hello little reader, I'm an unusual creature. The albatross is my name. I take time for a story if there were more for me, but so little of my time remains. I've got these big, huge wings. Yes, these big, clumsy things, like a gigantic Atlantic seagull. They really are very large, so I can fly very far. Bigger they are than an adult. But those adults have forgotten about us albatrosses, and that's why my time is up. They put things in my home which simply don't belong, and now they can't reverse what they've done. So it's a picture of plastic floating in the ocean. Those little plastic caps, they are very long lasting, floating like miniature boats. They toss and they turn, and they cause great concern for us birds who make our homes on the coast. This is why it gets denied by publishers. We see them at sea, we confuse them, you see, for the fishes we feed to our chicks. We gobble them up, we carry them home, and those caps make our babies all sick. So there's a huge die-off in the albatross population because they get fed plastic and the chicks don't yet have the ability to regurgitate. So they starve to death with stomachs full of plastic. So my story may go, I'm sorry to say, there once was a bird called albatross, not quite as long-lasting as this bottle or cap is, but boy, what a significant loss. But what if that ending has yet to be written? What if we could do something about it? What if you put down this book and took action? It's as simple as changing one habit. Get a water bottle that lasts for you for years. Keep it clean. Don't let it get lost. Every time you fill it up and drink it down, you're doing your part for the albatross. In that way, little reader, we each make a difference. Every man, woman, boy, and girl. It's not as hard as it seems to become the change you want to see in this world. So goes the Albatross children's book. So now's when we would sing the kids out, but it's up to you guys what you want to do. Okay, Miss Leona. But I think we should still sing.
Okay.
So our offering, and I'm actually going to talk about this scene that's in the picture there. That's Ahab nailing a gold balloon to the mast of the ship. Dr. John always puts it best that this church takes your time, your treasures, and your talents. We are a free church with no ecclesiastical hierarchy, no governmental agency has any authority over us. We maintain our status as a free church by accepting no money from any outside source. In addition to their annual pledges, our members and friends choose to give an additional donation during the Sunday worship as public witness that we all share and remain a free church. If you are a visitor or newcomer, you being here is gift enough. Thank you so much for your morning offering, given in the spirit of generosity and received with gratitude and love. Okay, thank you so much. So, why is Moby-Dick considered the American novel? Okay, I'm going in teacher mode. At the time of its publication, it was not well received. It was published in 1851, and critics didn't really know what to do with it, to the point that it was housed in Yale's nonfiction library rather than the fiction library, because they thought it read like a how-to manual for recording the practices of whaling. And honestly, you can understand the confusion. The novel contains chapters that read almost like a whaling manual, but interspliced with Shakespearean rants and philosophical soliloquies of the rambling Captain Ahab. So there is a real cultural power to Moby-Dick that makes it feel scriptural. It feels like American scripture to me. One aspect is that Ahab is a Quaker, and scholars think that it was a choice by Ahab, so that a choice by Melville to make Ahab a Quaker, so that he could say thee and thou in all his soliloquies and like really feel Shakespearean. When we read it in the American lens, it's amazing to see how deep the tendrils reach into our culture. If you know anything about Moby-Dick, you probably know about Ahab and his peg leg made of whale ivory and his revenge tour against the whale that disfigured him. But there are really deep hooks into American history. Just like all good American school children know that Moby-Dick has Captain Ahab, all good American school children know the story of Benedict Arnold, or at least the name. You've heard of Benedict Arnold, the great trader? Okay. Before Benedict Arnold was a trader, he was like an American hero. He was one of Washington's most celebrated generals. One of his famous victories came at the Battle of Fort Stanwix. A few weeks later, there was the Battle of Saratoga, where Benedict Arnold was again this great hero. At the Battle of Saratoga, Benedict Arnold was riding in battle on a horse, and a musket ball shattered his leg, went through his leg, and punctured the lungs of the horse that he was riding. So his leg got shot, and then the horse fell on top of him and further crushed his legs. So they were going to amputate his leg, but he refused. He refused to have the leg amputated. In recovery, they realized that they didn't set the leg correctly. So some weeks later, they had to reset this leg and remove some of the bones. And the result was that Benedict Arnold walked as if he had a peg leg, because his right leg was 2 to 3 inches shorter than his left leg. When Ahab loses his leg, he goes through this terrible, nightmarish trance as they round the bottom of Cape Horn, and he's screaming from the belly of the boat and going through this terrible transformation where his mind becomes set against the whale, and he will live for nothing else than to get revenge on the whale. Similarly, Benedict Arnold goes through a similar terrible recovery, and in this traumatic experience, he turns on the United States, and after that recovery, he starts working with the British to quell the American tax revolt. What does this have to do with Herman Melville? Herman Melville's grandfather fought with Benedict Arnold at Fort Stanwix, and it's a fact of history recorded in his naming of his son, Stanwix Melville. So clearly, Herman Melville knew like these deep American experiences, and maybe we see shadows of them in his characters. I could teach you an entire course on the cultural influence of Moby-Dick. I really could. If you go to the William Faulkner Museum, which basically is just his house after he died, it looks like he just went to get groceries. And you walk into his living room, and there's a Rockwell Kent of Captain Ahab right in the middle of his living room. At the 100-year anniversary of Moby-Dick's printing, they put a board together to like celebrate it, and John Steinbeck was the head of the board. And one of the most notable things is they had a motorized inflatable whale that paddled around this port, and they called it Moby-Dick. There's a legendary Led Zeppelin song with a legendary John Bonham solo called Moby-Dick. A coffee company wanted to name themselves after the ship, the Pequod. The ship's called the Pequod because it's like a gravestone of the first indigenous tribe that we erased outside of Boston, the Pequod. So that's why the ship carries its name. And the name Pequod for a coffee company didn't test well for advertising. So they instead chose the name of Captain Ahab's first mate, his good conscience. His name is Starbuck. That's why the coffee company is called Starbucks. So I could go on. But today we're here to talk about the UU principles that are woven throughout this book. I see them clear as day. And for me, the fourth principle is what breaks through the surface like a breaching whale. The free and responsible search for truth and meaning. It's the free and responsible search for truth and meaning. That's what whalers are doing. That's at the heart of Moby-Dick. Before we dive into the book proper, Melville corresponded with Nathaniel Hawthorne, who wrote The Scarlet Letter. They were close friends, and there's some evidence that they were more than friends. But Nathaniel Hawthorne wrote of Melville, quote, "Herman Melville, as he always does, began to reason of providence and futility, and of everything that lies beyond the human mind. He can neither believe nor be comfortable in unbelief. He's too honest and too courageous not to try to do one or the other. He has never found a home in faith." So like Melville himself, I feel myself still searching. That's what brings me here. And maybe you feel like you're still in the search as well. So this brings us to Ishmael. Ishmael is the primary narrator of the piece. Another piece of trivia you might remember from high school is that Moby-Dick starts with one of the most famous sentences in American literature history. It's "Call me Ishmael." So he does not say his name is Ishmael. He says, "Call me Ishmael." So who is Ishmael? Ishmael is from the Old Testament, and he's actually the first son of Abraham at 86 years of age, which is not possible because my father's 86 and I can't picture him bringing a child into this world right now. But at 86 years of age, Abraham and his wife were unable to conceive. So his wife Sarah offered Abraham his Egyptian maidservant, Hagar. And Hagar conceives Ishmael. 14 years later, when Ishmael's 14, Abraham and Sarah are able to conceive. Now Abraham is 100 years old, and he's able to conceive. And that's their first legitimate son, Isaac. So they banish Ishmael as an illegitimate son. He has no home, he has no port, and he's left to wander. Call me Ishmael. It fits, right? And that's exactly who the narrator is. He's a wanderer searching the world. So why go to sea? Well, Ishmael explains 5 sentences later, "Whenever I find myself growing grim about the mouth, whenever it's a damp and drizzly November in my soul, whenever I find myself involuntarily pausing before coffin warehouses and bringing up the rear of a funeral, and especially whenever my hypos get such the upper hand of me that it requires a strong moral principle to prevent me from deliberately stepping into the street and methodically knocking people's hats off, then I account it high time to get to sea as soon as I can. This is my substitute for pistol and ball." I think that's kind of what brought me to UFB the first time, is I think I was in a damp and drizzly November in my soul. Through this narration, we see an early shedding of cultural skin in classic UU fashion. He begins to let go of some of the assumptions that were inherited through his youth in his culture that shaped his worldview, and he sheds them for a search of true truth and meaning. This is sometimes interpreted critically as being anti-Christian, and I don't think it's quite as pointed as that. But Ishmael is a subversive figure from the very beginning. From his name to his worldview to the way he interacts with other people, he questions everything about his cultural standing. Moby-Dick starts like a buddy comedy. It has a ton of humor in the first few chapters, like absurd humor. So before Ishmael finds his ship, he stays at an inn, but there's no rooms left. So the innkeeper says, "Well, you can stay with one of the harpooneers. He's a cannibal, just so you know. But he's a nice guy. You can share with him, you know?" So Ishmael at first refuses the idea, but eventually he lets go of the assumptions and he thinks, well, what's the worst that could actually happen? So He goes to bed, and Queequeg, who's pictured in the middle, he's covered head to toe in tattoos, and he has this iconic top knot on top of his head. So Queequeg's not in a room, so Ishmael settles in and goes to sleep. In the middle of the night, he wakes up to discover Queequeg is now in the room. He's tattooed from head to toe, and he's carrying a tomahawk that on one side is an axe, and on the other side is a pipe. And he's accompanied by this little religious statue that Queequeg prays to called Yojo. So he does this ritual, and then he starts to climb into bed, not realizing Ishmael's there. So there's this jump scare on both sides, and this really awkward and comedic moment unfolds. But what's really important is what happens next. Ishmael's fear and assumptions melt away. He forces himself to see Queequeg not as a stranger, not as an outsider, but as another searcher, just another human looking for meaning in the world. Ishmael reflects, quote, "What's all this fuss I've been making about?" Thought to myself. "The man's a human being just as I am. He has just as much reason to fear me as I have to be afraid of him. Better to sleep with a sober cannibal than any drunken Christian." "Landlord," I said, "tell him to stash his tomahawk over there, or his pipe, or whatever he may call it. Tell him to stop smoking. In short, I will turn in with him. But I don't fancy having a man smoking in bed with me. No, it's dangerous. Besides, I'm not insured." This being told to Queequeg, he at once complied, and again politely motioned for me to get into the bed, rolling over to one side as much to say, "I won't touch a leg of you." I turned in, and I never slept better in my entire life. A few chapters later, reflecting further on Queequeg's rituals as he's praying to Yojo, Ishmael says, "As Queequeg's Ramadan, or fasting, or humiliation was to continue all day, I chose not to disturb him until towards nightfall. For I cherish the greatest respect towards anybody's religious obligations, never mind how comical they may seem, and could not find it in my heart to undervalue even a congregation of ants who would worship at a toadstool. I say we good Presbyterian Christians should be charitable in these things and not fancy ourselves so superior to other mortals, pagans and whatnot, because of their half-crazy conceits on these subjects." There was Queequeg now, certainly entertaining the most absurd notions about Yojo and his Ramadan. But what of that? Queequeg thought he knew what he was about, I suppose. He seemed to be content. And there, let him rest. All our arguing with him would be to no avail. Let him be, I say. And heaven have mercy on us all, Presbyterians and pagans alike. For we are all somehow dreadfully cracked about the head and sadly seeking mending. Generally speaking, in Ishmael's world, nearly everyone he meets believes that they have some answer about God or fate or the nature of the world, and Ishmael continually returns to the same realization, that we're all just dreadfully cracked about the head. And honestly, that might be one of the most deeply human ideas in this book. We are all searchers. One of the most important choices Melville makes is the entire journey takes place at sea. There's no landmarks. There's nowhere to leave a footprint. There's no trail to follow. There's nothing certain or permanent except the mystery, the unknowable nature of the ocean itself. The only thing the whaleman can do is search and keep searching. And that is where Ishmael connects so deeply with our Unitarian Universalist understanding of faith. I'm reminded of one of our favorite songs. I give thanks to the waves upholding me. Hail the great winds urging me on. Greet the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sailor's song. This brings us to Ahab. So if Ishmael is the free search, representative of free and open search for truth and meaning, Ahab is when somebody thinks they have the answers. When the novel shifts its focus to Ahab, Ishmael melts away almost entirely. The narrative really begins to orbit the psychology of Ahab and his mission of revenge against the white whale. On a deeper level, he's not simply hunting a whale. He's lashing out against fate itself. He's fighting against the gods, against the universe, against whatever force he believes marked him for suffering. Whether that destiny was ever real or not almost becomes irrelevant, because Ahab has something to live for, and what he thinks he's living for is this mission. Kind of reminds me of some of my political family members who are very certain that there is this goal that they're working towards. This acceptance isolates him, like it does them. The thoughts that are constantly being mulled over and rehearsed in the private chambers of his mind are rarely ever shared with those around him, and it almost starts to decay him from the inside. Melville writes, Ahab became inaccessible. Though nominally included in the census of Christendom, he was alien to it. He lived in the world as the last grizzly bear lived in settled Missouri. And as when spring and summer had departed, that wild Logan of the woods buried himself in the hollywood tree, lived out his winter there, sucking on his own paws. So in his inclement, howling old age, Ahab's soul, shut up in that cave trunk of his body, fed upon the sullen paws of his own gloom. In one of the most famous sections of the novel, Ahab uses his charisma to draw the crew into his obsession of killing the whale. He takes a $16 gold doubloon and nails it onto the mast, and he tells his men that the first person to spot the white whale, who you'll see surface like a mound of snow, whoever sees it first will get that $16 doubloon. So it's a brilliant piece of leadership. It's dangerous. We see Trump do it all the time. His first mate, Starbuck, who's his good conscience, reminds Ahab that they're not on this journey for revenge. They have an oil quota that they need to meet, and that these men need to be paid for their 3 years of service, and that their mission has nothing to do with Moby-Dick. Starbuck also reminds Ahab of the most obvious truth. The whale didn't hurt him. There was no intention. It was not an act of evil. It was not an act of hatred. It was just nature. It wasn't God or anything. Starbuck says, vengeance against the dumb brute that simply smote thee from the blindest instinct? This is madness. To be enraged with a dumb thing, Captain Ahab? This is blasphemous. Ahab responds, hark ye yet again. A little lower layer. All visible objects, man, are but masks. But in each event, in the living act, the undoubted deed there, some unknown but still reasoning thing pushes forth the moldings of its features from behind this unreasoning mask. If man will strike through that mask, how can the prisoner reach outside except for thrusting through this wall? To me, that white whale is that wall shoved near to me. Sometimes I think he's not beyond, but 'tis enough. He tasks me, he heaps me. I see him in outrageous strength, with an inscrutable malice sinuating it. That inscrutable thing is chiefly what I hate. And be the white whale agent or be the white whale principle, I will wreak that hate upon him. Talk not to me of blasphemy, man. I'd strike the sun if it insulted me. So Ahab gets corrupted. Like his true heart becomes corrupted by what he thinks he knows the answer is. So he is not searching for anything. His search is over, and now it's a pursuit. He already knows what the white whale means. It means vengeance. It means controlling his fate. It means some sort of personal enemy of God made flesh. Nothing, not even reason, not compassion, not his crew, not his own survival, not his family at home can move him from this conviction. Where Ishmael meets someone strange and thinks he's cracked about the head just like me, Ahab meets his crew and sees them only as tools of accomplishing this purpose. Again, there's modern political overtures in that. In another time, perhaps Ahab would have been comfortable turning an entire movement toward one person's certainty. And that is exactly the danger with our fourth principle. The free and responsible search for meaning. A search for truth stops being free the moment we stop searching and we start demanding that the world confirm what we think are the answers, what we've decided is true. And one of the strengths of being UU and our UU tradition is that we're joined by deed, not by creed. We don't gather because we all possess the same answers. We gather because we're committed on an ongoing search, and we will all find what we find along the way. Ahab is not destroyed because he is wrong about the whale existing. He's destroyed because he becomes accountable to nothing beyond his own certainty. In Moby-Dick, certainty is not strength. Certainty is a kind of death that simply hasn't caught up with his body yet. Later in the novel, there's a lesser known but deeply revealing moment where a whale is killed, and Ahab, displaying a kind of morbid curiosity, examines its head. He wants to make eye contact with this dead whale. And it's such a human thing to do. which is why I find it so fascinating from a character who feels like inhumane so much of the time. But they kill this animal, and he wants to like look in its face and see what they've done. Ahab mutters to this whale. He says, "Speak, you vast and venerable head, which thou ungarnished with a beard, yet here, yet there, look hoary with mosses. Speak, mighty head, and tell us the secret thing that is in there. Of all the divers, you have dived the deepest. That head upon which the upper sun now gleams has moved amid the world's foundations, where unrecorded names and navies are rusting away, and untold hopes and anchors are rotting away. Where in her murderous hold this frigate earth is ballasted with bones of millions of the drowned. There in that awful waterland, there was thy most familiar home. Thou hast been where bell diver never went, has slept by many sailors' side, where sleepless mothers would give their lives to lay them down. Thou saw the locked lovers when leaping from their flaming ship. Heart to heart they sank beneath the exulting waves. You saw the murdered mate tossed by pirates from a midnight deck. For hours he fell into the deep midnight of the insatiate maw, and his murderers still sailed on unharmed, while swift lightnings shivered the neighboring ship that would have borne righteous husband to outstretch longing arms. O you head, thou hast seen enough to split the planets and to make an infidel of Abraham, and not one single syllable is yours." In this moment, I think it starts, in a couple minutes I'll talk about what the whale symbolizes, but this scene reminds me that Ahab he's not insane. He's not a deranged madman. He's driven by principle and philosophy. It's just a corrupted version. It's a set of principles that are his answers, that he believes are true, and yet he looks at this whale in the face and he's still standing on the edge of mystery, even when he thinks he has the answers. Despite our human tendency to believe what we above all creatures have some special access to divine, there are moments in this book and in our lives when we find ourselves pressed against the boundary between what we know to be true and what remains truly unknowable. We will never know the depths of our human experience. That's the challenge with the search. Can we be comfortable in this discomfort? Can we accept that there are mysteries in this existence that we will never fully touch? Can we remember that we are participants in nature and not masters of it? Perhaps that is one of Melville's greatest gifts, the reminder to stay humble, to remain curious, to respect our place within the vast and beautiful fabric of all natural things. Which lastly brings us to the whale. Can you click one more slide, Miss Emily? So I love these pictures of the whale in the book. It's like the yin and yang of the whale. It's really cool. People have all kinds of theories about what the whale represents, and I think they're all right. I think everyone knows correct, because there's no way to know for sure. Ishmael is questioning, he's a questioning, skeptical narrator, and he carries with him all the cultural influences of the 19th century American. He's a person in search of truth, and he's also willing to admit that he doesn't know. Ahab's the opposite. He's this demonic figure, a dictator of fate, pulling hard on the threads of destiny that he's become trapped in. Between these two men is the whale, the white whale that becomes this great symbol that amplifies the contrast between their philosophies. It stands between Ishmael's willingness to search and Ahab's certainty that he's got the answers. The whale has been interpreted in so many ways. There are arguments that Moby-Dick is a story about humanity conquering nature. There's arguments that that the whale is God. There's Christian interpretations that see this book as paralleling biblical messaging, which I really don't see, even though I try to be I try to be generous in that interpretation, but I don't see it. So I don't think the whale is God. I don't think it's evil. I think it's your life. I think it's your examined life. I think it's your free and open search for meaning in this world. Every other chapter of Moby-Dick shifts between fiction and nonfiction, which is part of the reason that they didn't know how to classify it when it was first published. There's an entire chapter called Whale Lines, and it's just literally a how-to manual of why it's so important keeping your whale lines in order. Because you're about to harpoon a 45-ton animal, and it's going to rip those whale lines out of the hold, and it could decapitate people or maim people. It could pull people into the water, which happens to Ahab at the end of the book, spoiler alert. Um, but in it being a fiction and nonfiction parallel, it's amazing. The whale lines chapter ends with this paragraph, and it is like such a powerful paragraph to me. I hope I'm doing a good explanation. I hope it makes sense. Melville writes, all men live enveloped in whale lines. All men are born with halters around their necks, but it's only when caught in the swift and sudden turn of death that mortals realize the silent, subtle, ever-present perils of being alive. And if you are a philosopher, though you might be seated in a whale boat, you would not at heart feel one more bit of terror than if you were seated before your evening fire with your poker in your hand, rather than your harpoon. So this to me is what the whale really, it's not about what the whale represents, it's what the whale reveals, the meaning that's revealed through the pursuit of the whale. To be alive, to be human, is to reach for something. We pursue goals personally, professionally, relationally, spiritually. We like seek. It's like a natural human thing to wonder, why are we here? What are we doing? Why do they act like that? Why do we act like this? How can I be a part of them? How could they be a part of us? We're constantly analyzing like that. The whale is whatever great thing we're seeking. The small goals might be small fish. Your larger dreams are those larger whales. Your life goal, that might be your white whale, but you're never going to achieve it unless you have your whale lines in order. And unless your crew and the people around you understand the methodology of your pursuit. The greatest thing we spend our lives on pursuing becomes our whales. The question is not whether we should have a whale. The question is, how do you go pursue them? Do we become like Ahab? Do we become so certain of a purpose that we lose sight of the people beside us? Do we become so consumed by our own search that we stop listening, we stop learning, we stop being changed and influenced by the people around us? Or do we be like Ishmael, curious, humble, willing to encounter someone different, willing to admit that we are all in some way cracked about the head? This is where I see the deep connection to the UU tradition. We believe in that free and responsible search for meaning, but we also believe that none of us are searching alone. We are part of this community. We are shaped by one another. We are reminded that our lives are interconnected and that our journey toward meaning is not something we complete. It's something we participate in together. And perhaps that is why the image of the whale feels so powerful to me. Life is so vast, and it is an eternal mystery. The things we seek are so huge. We are all out in the same ocean. We are all navigating our own search, each of us connected by invisible lines of relationship and lines of responsibility to one another. So if you find yourself without anything to look forward to, and you feel like you're not building anything, you're not nurturing anything, then perhaps you are like Ishmael on page 5, and you are feeling that damp, drizzly November in your soul. Perhaps it's time for you to find your way to sea. So I'm really thankful for this community. We meet in the sanctuary that's shaped like an upturned whaleboat. You come here every Sunday. We search together. We never tell each other that we've got the answers, and we are truly finding comfort in that responsible search for truth and meaning. So I wish you all calm seas ahead. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk about. So you could rise in body and spirit for hymn number 145, I believe it is. And thank you for singing some uncommon songs. And Cecilia, thank you for playing. now is the time set aside to share our joys and sorrows. We turn off our recording for this, so if you are weighed down with any sorrow, or if you are celebrating a joy after we extinguish the chalice here. Did I put the chalice words on the slide? Yeah. Oh, okay.
I've never done this before.
The black thing, yeah. All right, we extinguish this chalice, but not the light of wisdom. Warmth of our community, for the fire and commitment, these we carry in our hearts and in our hands. So we are together again. Thank you. So one last paragraph I want to share from the book. And it parallels with joys and sorrows. So, most of you know that my family had like a really difficult year. And I hope there's other members of the congregation that I can share this with, because I know I'm definitely not alone. There's some people who have been going through it in this congregation this year, which is just one of the 10,000 reasons that I appreciate it. Like no matter what your age is, you can come here and we can group lift all that kind of stuff. So I think I'm learning how important it is, I guess is how I should phrase it. There's this amazing paragraph in Moby-Dick. And this is kind of what Melville does. He writes scripturally. This isn't really about anybody. This is just kind of about the human condition. He writes, there is a wisdom that is woe. Like sometimes you learn something and it hurts to learn. There's a wisdom that is woe, but there's a woe that is madness. And there is a Catskill eagle, very American symbol. There's a Catskill eagle in our soul that can alike dive down into those blackest gorges and then soar out of them again, and once again become invisible in those sunny spaces. So we can go into the darkest and we can go high into the sunniest spaces. And even if that eagle forever flies within those dark gorges, that gorge is in the mountains, so that even in his lowest swoop, that mountain eagle is still higher than other birds who only fly along the plains, even though they think they soar. To me, it's like living that examined life is part of what brings us here. And it really does, like whatever the soul is, that part of the mystery, whatever that whale is out there in the ocean, that is our soul. I really do think we elevate it when we come here. So, Cecilia, do we have a postlude? Yep. Okay, thank you. So join me in listening to the postlude, and then we'll get some coffee. Thank you for listening.